Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. All right, thank you. All right.
I just need to know when I can start.
No, nothing added. Everything's as it was. Yeah, and so are we good to start? The webinar start? Yeah, so
So who do I look for?
as long as the cameraman gives you a thumbs up,
Okay.
and we'll tell him to start right now.
For them, it's like they will do a 10-minute. You guys ready? Yeah. Welcome, everyone. So on behalf of the Pulitzer Center, thank you so much for being here with us for this conference, which is the theme is Interconnected Reporting the Climate Crisis. We are honored to have you here with us this week. My name is Yao-Hua, and I am an environmental and science journalist from Malaysia, writing for Makaranga. I'm also a Rainforest Investigations Network Fellow. I will be moderating this forum, which is called Supercharge Your Environmental Stories with Data and Visuals. Now, for those of you who have not joined us before, the Pulitzer Center is a nonprofit journalism and education organization dedicated to elevating public engagement with systemic, underreported global issues. The Pulitzer Center provides over 200 grants each year to journalists, photographers, filmmakers to pursue their reporting projects. The center collaborates with news outlets all around the world. There's an annual conference held by the Pulitzer Center, and this is the 6th. The theme this year, Interconnected, Reporting the Climate Crisis, focuses on the very urgent crisis that's hitting our planet's coastlines, rainforests, oceans, and the impact of that crisis on the people and communities who live there. So before we start, for the people who are here on site with us, just some housekeeping reminders. Please use the hashtag interconnected22 to join the conversation online with fellow attendees and follow along with the conference insights and activities. And again, another reminder, to keep each other safe, we kindly request that you keep your mask on, even when you use the microphones on both sides for your questions. Now with that, let's get started. Environmental stories, we know, are complex to produce. There is the science of the environment itself, which is complex enough, and then we overlay on top of that complexity many, many forces that interact with the environment. For example, politics, technology, culture, religion, you name it, it's there. And every story is an environmental story, and every environmental story should be a story of the world and the individual. Or at least it could be. And it is our role as the journalists to make it so. And doing it can be very daunting because of the amount of data that we need to find and we need to analyze. And after we have done all that, we have this challenge of crafting all of that together into a very compelling, engaging story. And what do we want to do at the end of the day? We want to get readers hooked onto an environmental story, digest it, and then use it to make better informed decisions. Now, one of the many ways that we can do that is to make smart use of data and visuals. Now, we have all been wowed by stories over yesterday and the last few days of places and people that are foreign to us, alien to us, but we get the story. And that's because the messages are supported by very convincing data and delivered by very engaging visuals and videos, animations, graphs, etc. But how can we do that? Well, I'll leave that question to our panelists. And we have here with us excellent colleagues and friends who work across the tropics. Well, first, on my left is Patchar Duangklad from Thailand. I'll give more detailed introduction when they present. And then next to her is Hyury Potter from Brazil. And then Last but not least, on my most left is Annika McGinnis, who works out of Uganda. So for the rest of the session today, we have about 1 hour and 15 minutes. What we'll do is I'll invite each of our panelists to come forth and give about a 10-minute presentation of how they use data visuals to supercharge their environmental stories. And then we will follow that with a 45-minute long conversation, right? During which we welcome questions from the floor. You just step up to the microphone and then we'll field your questions. All right, without further ado, I'll first invite Patchar Duangklad from Thailand to give a presentation. Now, she was a Rainforest Journalism Fund grantee in 2021. She is also the business developer and co-founder of a company, a company called Punch Up that she started in 2019. And the company is run by storytellers, designers, data specialists, and developers who combine all their skills in data, tech, and design to create stories that engage and also inform meaningful conversations. For her Rainforest Journalism project, Patchar's team produced what I would call a forensic analysis and story of Thailand's 4-decade national plan to increase forest cover and the impact of that on the local communities. Patchar, please. Let's put our hands together to welcome Patchar.
So hi, everyone, and thank you very much, Yao-Hua. I'm very pleased to be here today. I'm Patchar Duangklad. I'm a co-founder of Punch Up. We call ourselves as a data storytelling studio based in Bangkok, Thailand. We want to create a meaningful conversation with data, storytelling, design, and technology. Today, I would like to share our experience in reporting, gripping environmental stories with data storytelling. I have to, okay, here's my slides. Okay. Okay, so in Thailand, we cannot deny that drama-driven stories are floating through the media scenes. The story like Johnny Depp and Amber Heard in Thai versions are viral and get much attention from mass media, from mass audience. They love to follow the news that there is a story of good guys, bad guys, and unsolving mysteries, more or less like watching soap opera. Consequently, the story that doesn't have a dramatic side are easily slip off their attention. The story like environmental issues. Therefore, we Punch Up. What we are trying to do is to grip the audience with different approach, using data-driven storytelling, hopefully to draw them back to the story that matters in refreshing and engaging way. We combine the power of data, storytelling, design, and a touch of interactive technologies to make the critical stories more interesting and digestible. So in 2021, we were granted by the RJF to work on this project. It's called Encroaching Forests and Encroaching People. This project covered the issues of the consequence of Thai government's forest reclamation policies, especially the one introduced and strictly executed under the military junta government in the 2014 to 2015. One of the methods deployed by the state authorities was to reclaim the forest land back from the villagers and private sectors. Between 2013 to 2019, there were about 30,000 legal cases involve forest encroachment. So today there are 4 main points that we learned from doing this project, which I would like to share with you guys today. So on the first point, the first point is to look at the data until you have a better questions. At first, We start this project by questioning the government's goal to have at least 40% of forest area covered in Thailand, which has been used as the central claim of the forest reclamation policy. We were wondering whether the goal is feasible, culturally sensitive, or beneficial for Thai people. We start looking for data, and it led us to another question, which is why the overall forest area in Thailand almost hasn't changed at all with such an intensive reclamation policy. So our question is that, does the forest reclamation policy really work? And what are the consequences of that? So we start working with the forest area data in Thailand and the government's reports, and also gathering the profile of the forest reclamation cases to see what happened, what really happened to the people. There were a lot of trial and error before we reached this final question. We have made many drafts of visualizations along the way, not just using the data and then they produce the final products, but we did many drafts of visualization to help us develop the sensible story out of that. For example, on the left-hand side, we try to see what it would take to complete the 40% goal of forest coverage at the provincial level. But unfortunately, there is no sufficient data. On the right-hand side, we try to visualize the variety of forest land to identify the primary target forest area of the reclamation policy. And unfortunately, again, the data was conflicting. So we focus on the impact of the policy on people in the area instead. The second point that we learned is to be insightful and be interesting. Data by itself cannot say anything, but with design and storytelling, it can say 1,000 words. We use data visualization in our project in 3 different ways. Firstly, to help the audience understand the problem better. For example, the inconsistency of the reclaimed forest area amount and the change of the overall forest area afterward. It's not going along together, so it's raised a lot of questions. Secondly, we made an interactive map for the audience to explore more on the example of forest reclamation cases to see how the people in the area have been affected by the policy. Using the impact criteria from the National Human Rights Commission's report in Thailand. Each type of the effect shows in this map in different colors, so the audience can explore that. And lastly, we visualize the concept of forest definition and measurement of the authorities. The concept is quite complicated, yet very important in understanding why the reclamation policy doesn't result in increasing forest area, but instead to more conflict with the people who live in the forest. The visualization can help explain this complex concept better than just using text to explain it only. On the third point is to combine the data with human stories. The fieldwork stories can add up to our project and make it more relevant and relatable to the audience. It can help us understand the why question behind the big pictures that we get from the data. In this project, we did an interview with villagers, indigenous people from Soplan village up north in Chiang Mai province in Thailand. And also the national park officers, who's the representative of the authorities, to explain and show their perspective on whether they think that people can really live in harmony with the forest. Moreover, we create a kind of immersive experience that allow the audience to explore the Soplan village as if they were there. This is the interactive website that we did, and people can like explore through the 360 degrees camera footage of the village which show the indigenous people's livelihood in 3 different ways, like cultural ways and spiritual ways, and also like how they preserve their forest area. The last point is to work with the established network for insightful data. This project difficulty is to find consistent and sufficient official data from the government. They are in a very poor, inferior format, and separately, and very like scratching like around many websites, and difficult to gather them. Therefore, we reach out for help from the network of NGOs who already work on the issues. Landwatch Thailand and its network help us gather the example of the forest reclamation cases, which we use on the interactive map. The Northern Development Foundation help us with in-depth data of Soplan village, using the map to show the sacred forest area, which is the way that they preserve their forests. So these are like 4 of my key takeaways from my project. In making a data-driven storytelling, which like more to grip the audience attention, and this is the lesson learned from our project. And lastly, this project could not be done without a great teamwork. It's not only me that do that. I want to use these opportunities to recognize my team, Punch Up team, who are behind this project, and all other data storytelling projects that we have done so far in the past 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Patchar. So we have just heard from Patchar on how her team used storytelling, visuals, and data to to tell a very good story, a very engaging story, which is inherently complex. 40 years of change, but that was how she did it. And she used maps in her story, but we hear more about maps, how maps can be used to supercharge our environmental stories from Hyury Potter, who is a freelance reporter from Brazil, and he writes about corruption and environment. He was a Rainforest Journalism Fund grantee, and then a 2-time Rainforest Investigations Network Fellow in 2021 and this year, 2022. He investigates illegal mining and hidden and illegal airstrips. Now, he is also the author of the Mined Amazon project, which is a real-time map published by Info Amazonia that tracks illegal mining requests within indigenous lands and protected areas. Now, the project was supported by the Pulitzer Center's Rainforest Journalism Fund, and it won a journalism innovation grant awarded by the International Center for Journalists and the Wall Street Journal. So, come and tell us about how you use maps, Hyury. Yes, welcome.
It's here? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. First, I would like to thank for Pulitzer Center community for the opportunity to be here talking alongside such talented colleagues. And, well, I'm not a data visualization journalist, as you will see on my slides. Sorry in advance. But I like to see myself as a data visual investigator. I like to start my investigations looking into data, looking what can I see on a map or in a bunch of numbers. And it's basically how my investigation started. If I can see it, if we can see this, I have 2 examples here. On the left side, it's a map from my Amazon project that are the color polygons here in yellow, in other colors. You can see the mining requests that are affecting indigenous territories in Brazil, in the Amazon, Brazilian Amazon, and in protected areas. On the right side is a Amazon Mining Watch map. It's a tool created by the RIN, Rainforest Investigations Network, with Earthrise Media to detect gold mining in the Amazon, legal and illegal gold mining, but most of them are illegal. So we can see a lot of spots, and it's very important to start investigation because if we can see it, we can look a little bit more close, and we can investigate it. So for example, one of the yellow dots that you saw on the Amazon Mining Watch map is this illegal mining in the southwest of Pará State in Itaituba City. So we can see the mining pits, we can see some trucks, and clandestine airfield. So what is this? Okay, nope. No. Well, basically, what we're supposed to see here is the when every time we talk about investigations in journalism, we talk about following the money. But when we talk about starting investigation from a map, the first thing is not following the money. Money was marked was the sheet with the X. So just to explain my beautiful slide, and I can make more jokes from this slide. But in this case, we have to follow the names. What is that? It's that if you have a spot on a map, like the previous mining pit, we have to try to find out which name is connected to this spot, to this illegal mining. It's a person, it's a businessman, could be a company, right? Mining company, or could be the government, because if it's a public land like indigenous territory or a protected area, well, they are responsible for what is going on there. They have to do something. And that's my first step of investigation, follow the names. And for that, I normally use two steps, two ways to investigate. The first source is geolocated databases, because we can try to find those names. For example, mining requests in Brazil is a public data. Everyone can download it on a lot of type of files, shapefile or KML. They have their geolocation, latitude and longitude, and they have the names connected to this mining request. We can try to see that there is some big English or American mining company that has a request in this area. Could be gold, could be copper, or anything else. Could be a land registration in Brazil. This is the kind of data that is open to. It's not too much trustable, because you can use a straw man to put his name on the paper. So you have to, if you use this kind of data, you have to be very careful. You have to check it, double check it, and it's going on. And environmental fines is a very useful database too in Brazil, because they have the geolocation, they have the names connected to these fines, and airfields registration. Because, as you saw before, it's very common in the Amazon. If you see a gold mining, you can see an airfield close, because these distances in the Amazon are very big. It's not, if you have to reach some point by car, it could take too many hours, 4 or 5 hours, and if you go in a plane, it's a few minutes. And the other sources that I use is the old journalism. So interviews, right? Try to reach people affected, and local NGOs help a lot, and public employees, whistleblowers, right? Prosecutors, and on my past project, I talked with a lot of pilots, because these supply chain, this gold market use a lot of airplanes for transportation. And that's the way I start an investigation. And I do my investigations. And I would like to share with you one investigation that, because of one spot, one legal mining, in Pará State, that I wrote 2 stories about this illegal mining, just because we knew we could saw it on a map, and we started the investigation because of it. It was about this mining pit. It's a picture, a satellite image that my friend Edward Boyder from Earthrise Media that helped me a lot during the year, because I asked for him a lot of images, and he works with Earthrise Media. They have access to good satellite images, high resolution satellite images. That is something that when you are investigating, looking into maps, that helps a lot. And one thing that is sad is that this kind of high resolution satellite images are expensive. And we are journalists, right? We don't have money. So one thing that you could do is something that you are hearing here a lot, as do collaborations. Ask for help. Try to reach companies, NGOs, organizations that are open to understand your needs and understanding to help journalists. There's a lot of around, and you can try it. So this is the mining pit. Where our investigation started. Okay, this one will be tricky. I don't remember. Okay, the name of this company here, after looking into geolocated database, this company name is Ghana Gold Mining Company. After, first we saw the image, and then we started investigating who owns this mining, this mining pit, and how much money they are making. And I discovered that looking into documents, a lot of documents, we found out that they made $200 million in just 1 year. In just 1 year, this new company that was created 1 year before became the biggest gold mining company in the whole Brazilian Amazon. So it's really, really big, and they did that without an environmental license. And within a federal protected area. So totally illegal, their operation. So we wrote this story for The Intercept Brazil, and in partnership with Monga Bay publishing an English version of our story. I want to say thank you for the Monga Bay colleagues. And we keep investigating. Oh, sorry. Oh, now I have to. We keep investigating this story to write, and then a few months later, we wrote a second story about now we follow the money. So where this money, this gold, or the money involved in this company are going, and we found out that Ghana Gold had made a deal with the state government of Pará, state government of Pará, and other big gold mining companies in Pará State to refine their gold in a new gold refinery that was built in 2021. Sorry, they are about to start their operation probably next month. The name of this gold refinery is North Star. They were built with money from a Belgian tycoon, and this Belgian tycoon was convicted 2 years before for money laundering and to create a black gold market in Belgian justice. So it was important because with the name of these guys, the Getz family, we could track the companies related to these families, and we could track on the SEC files, on the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the United States, which big tech companies are buying gold from those guys. Because you have to, the companies, when you buy gold on the gold market, international market, you have to inform the suppliers. And these documents told us that, for example, Tesla, Amazon, Dell, Johnson & Johnson, HP, and Starbucks, and more than, I believe more than 200 companies listed on SEC reported to that bought gold from the Belgian tycoon, from companies related to the Belgian tycoon. Of course, all of them ignored my emails, but just one, Dell Computers, gave us a kind of proper answer, or at least they tried. They said to us that they are considering the Gits companies as a high-risk refiner, so they're gonna stop the buying gold from this kind of supplier. And I just would like to mention that for this story, we mentioned about, I talked a little bit about collaborations. For this story, we made a partnership, a collaboration with the Belgian reporter Christopher Clerks from Knack magazine that helped a lot, especially to understand Belgian documents, Belgian files, and the Belgian language that is so difficult to understand. Yelter Mers, our colleague, our RIN editor, helped on that too, because he's Belgian and he speaks this strange language. And our friend, our colleague, RIN colleague, Andy Laren from NBC, because we tried to reach American senators that were trying to ask for sanctions to the Department of Treasury in the United States to apply sanctions against one of the Gates brothers. And they did that 1 month later after our story be published. And it helped a lot on that because the 3 senators didn't answer my emails. Come on, they were receiving emails from a guy with a funny name, a Gmail. It's not very, I understand they're not answering me. So thanks to Andy, thanks to Yelter, and thanks to Christopher Clerks. And thanks to everyone. That's it. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Hyury. If I get an email from you, I'll suspect it came from Hogwarts or something. So we have heard from Patchar and Hyury on how to use visuals and then also map. Starting from a location on the map, we can follow the name, reveal the person or the entity behind it, and from there unearth, a whole treasure trove of stories. But it's quite obvious that it takes skill, it takes time, it takes resources. So how can a freelance journalist, train ourselves in those skills? And how can a newsroom provide those training? What are the resources required? So here to tell us more about that is Annika McGinnis, who is a multimedia journalist from the States, based in Uganda. She is the co-founder of Nile, a geojournalism platform and journalist network focused on data-based stories on water and environment in the 11 countries of the Nile Basin. And that's an initiative of Water Journalists Africa. Annika has also reported for Reuters, USA Today, and McClatchy newspapers, and is a Civicus goalkeeper, Pulitzer Center, and National Geographic Society grantee. Welcome, Annika.
Thank you so much, Yao, and I'm really honored to be here today, and very grateful to the Pulitzer Center for bringing us here and also for the support to InfoNile over the years. So InfoNile is a geojournalism platform inspired by Gustavo's work with Info Amazonia and Earth Journalism Network, and we aim to drive action on water, biodiversity, and environmental issues in the Nile Basin. Okay. So we have about 780 members in our network currently who are environmental journalists. We call them geojournalists, but this is really environmental journalists with an interest in data and geojournalism. And as InfoNile, we build the capacity of journalists, and we also connect them to scientists to produce cross-border stories that are published in different news platforms. So we're an initiative of Water Journalists Africa, which was founded by my colleague, Frederick Mujira. He's a Ugandan journalist based in Western Uganda, who runs a network of water journalists across the continent. And then InfoNile is an initiative within Water Journalists Africa. So you might wonder why we focus on the Nile River basin. So the Nile River is the longest river in the world, and it stretches through 11 countries in Africa, its basin, supporting millions of people in diverse countries, cultures, and environments. There's also an increasing environmental crisis in the basin, and especially increasing water scarcity as the populations are increasing, and there's also climate change, which is impacting rain-fed agriculture, and more people need to irrigate from the Nile. But at the same time, we're seeing a rise in nationalistic media reports where journalists are reporting what their governments are saying, reporting what's in press releases, and not really reporting data-based transboundary stories that would lead to a sustainable sharing of water resources. So we see a disconnect between journalists and scientists on both sides, also a skills gap, and then insufficient resources for journalists to go to the field, to do in-depth stories, and also to do data and science journalism stories based on the skills. So this is our approach at InfoNile. Since 2018, we have been producing projects like this. We first identify a theme of common and cross-border importance. So these are some of the themes we've worked on in the past, including biodiversity in different lakes in the region, plastic pollution, and water scarcity during COVID-19. Then we call for pitches from journalists in our network. We provide them with micro grants, funding to go out to the field to report an investigative story. So we have worked with journalists from radio stations, TV stations, print, newspapers, and online platforms. And in the past 2 years, we have been supporting journalists to work in collaborations. So we provide the grants either to journalists working in-country collaborations where we pair a radio journalist with a TV or newspaper journalist, or inter-country collaborations. So for example, if a journalist is reporting about a dam, which is cross-cutting amongst countries, we will support a group of journalists reporting from each of the countries to work together to report these stories. And we also aim that at least 50% of our stories are solutions journalism and not just reporting on the problems. So from there, all of the journalists in our programs go through a mentorship and training program, which lasts for about 3 to 6 months in data journalism and science reporting. So by the end of this program, we aim that all of them are able to actually produce a visualization for their own story, which is published in their local media house. After they publish in their media houses, we also translate the stories to regional languages, publishing them on InfoNile. And then we bring them together into cross-border multimedia projects, looking at the similar theme, but across different countries. So this involves additional cross-border data analysis, and it's where we really try to incorporate geojournalism visualizations like interactive maps, drone video, satellite image, graphics. And we also create additional actionable interactive maps. For example, we're about to launch the Wild Eye East Africa map in partnership with Oxpeckers, which tracks wildlife crime in East Africa. And this is an example of one of the maps. So like I mentioned, our training programs run for 3 to 6 months. We have been doing them mainly in partnership with Code for Africa, which is one of our biggest partners. And how it runs is that the journalists go through weekly online training sessions that take them through the basics of data journalism, from sourcing data to analyzing data in spreadsheets to how they can produce visualizations using free tools online. But as they go through this program, they're matched with a mentor who's in their country, a data expert, either from the Code for Africa network or also additional data experts who we have met over the years. And they're able to meet with them and refine their skills to actually produce the visualizations for their stories. And we've found that this model works really well to actually consolidate and practice the skills. And we also run additional data journalism cross-border workshops. For example, we held one recently looking at pollution of Lake Victoria that brought together editors and journalists from the Lake Victoria Basin countries. And now after this training, we are working on an investigation, taking samples from Lake Victoria at all the different countries, and then the journalists are working together to produce a bigger story. So these are just some of the themes that we've worked on over the years. The one supported by Pulitzer Center was Sucked Dry, looking at land and water grabs by foreign companies in the basin. Another interesting project that we are currently completing is a photojournalism project, which started with the water science and the climate science, but then worked with photographers to really produce humanistic stories on these issues. So total, we have enabled the production of 260, now it's a little bit more, database stories, which have been published in more than 106 media houses in 12 languages, and you can see in different media platforms. These are some of the examples of the data visualizations. Like I said, most are produced using free online tools like Flourish or Data Wrapper, and they're published in the local media houses. We also translate them to different languages. This is one of the examples of one of our maps. This is actually a map platform that mapped the stories onto a data set which was relating to the theme of the story. So this one was looking at the corresponding threats of COVID-19, flooding due to climate change, and water scarcity in the Nile basin. We track our story impacts every year, and so these are the public impacts that have been produced from the stories. But also something that's even more important to note is that 89% of the journalists' media houses started reporting more environmental or data-driven stories. So the journalists shared with us additional stories that they had produced after the grant or after the program, where they used the skills in data visualization or producing in-depth environmental stories. And why do they do that? A lot of them received some recognition from their story, whether it was an award, a speaking opportunity, or some kind of recognition that actually inspired them that producing a data and environmental story is good for my career and good for the media house, even in terms of winning awards, bringing in revenue. So that is how we're trying to influence the media houses to do more environmental and data-driven stories. So you can see some of the testimonies, like Jennifer, who is a radio journalist. When she was promoted to an editor, she said that she started training her team on how to do data-driven stories. And then Jacob, who's based in Tanzania, he started an online platform in the Mara River Basin, another transboundary basin, inspired by the work he had done with us. So what we are doing now to kind of increase the impact of our stories and still address some of these gaps, we've just launched a platform last month that connects journalists and scientists in the Nile Basin. Anyone can register for an account and then log in, search for a journalist or a scientist, and connect with them directly through the platform, where they can then respond via their email. So we are seeking to bridge the gap between the two groups and also increase the trust. So even on the side of a scientist who maybe wants media coverage for their research, they're able to connect with accredited environmental reporters who they can trust to represent their research in an accurate way. We are also trying to reach youth audiences through WhatsApp, which is highly used in the region, by producing mobile magazines that translate a very in-depth multimedia report into something that's digestible for a mobile audience. This is an automated chatbot, and you can access our stories, data, and the mobile magazines. And then finally, we are aiming to influence public action to conserve the environment through stories. And one of the ways we've started to do this is through different exhibitions of stories. These are two exhibitions done in Ripon landing site in Uganda and Rusinga Island in Kenya. Both of them climate change stories, one of them a solutions journalism story, and one of them looking at the impact of floods. So we brought back the photo stories to the communities where they were reported, and engaged the local leaders in conversations with their communities about climate change. And it also gave us ideas for follow-up stories. And we were also able to see how the communities viewed their representation in the photos, which had been winning awards. So This is my team. We're mostly based in Uganda, and we have coordinators in different countries. And we're very grateful to the Pulitzer Center, also Code for Africa, Earth Journalism Network, and many of our other partners. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Annika. So you have heard from all three panelists. Up next, we have about 30 minutes of time where we'll have a conversation about using data and visualizations for our environmental stories. So if anytime you have questions, just walk up to the mic and then you can ask your questions. But I'll get it rolling. I'll get the ball rolling. So if I'm inspired by all three of you. And if I've never ever done data story, I've never really played with Flourish or Data Wrapper, and QGIS, ArcGIS just scare me a lot. Like, where would be a good place for me to start, even considering data story and consider using visuals for my story, and assuming I'm a freelance journalist, the hardest of all. So, would like to go first? Maybe Patchar, you like to go first? Yeah.
Okay. I would like to share our experience. Actually, our team doesn't have experience in data visualization as well. We are a team combining of we call data storyteller, equivalent to journalist, and we have a designer. But our designer background, they're never they don't familiar with information design, so we have to train them a lot. To start, we use a lot of free tools, like Annika said, Flourish, or even something simple like a Google Sheet and the Excels that you can generate the easy visualization. That's very help to build up the story out of the data. You don't have to polish it yet, to the final product, but at least you can learn about data in visual ways, and this very help you develop your story. And then you can touch it up with the design later on. So I would say try using free tools, learning about it, playing with the data with those tools. It very help.
Mm-hmm. Right. Any of you want to add anything? Yeah.
Okay, sorry. In my yes. As Patchar said right now, is that I used free tools too, Flourish and for visualization. To look into the maps, I started last year with you because of RIN. I started to work with QGIS, and it's a very powerful and easy to manage. I'm talking about the regular.
Regular use, yeah.
What?
Regular use.
Yeah, the regular use. Yeah. Of course, you can be a hard user and you can do a lot of things that I have no idea how to do it. But QGIS, it's very useful, and I believe it's easy because it's easy to download or to upload some data on your map and to overlap some data. For example, what I do a lot is to download map data. The geolocated data of fire alerts, deforestation alerts, that is public data in Brazil, with minor requests. So I believe my tip will be QGIS. Try to do that. If you have any doubts on anything, put on YouTube. There's always someone resolving your problem. It's amazing, and that's it.
Yeah, so both Patchar and Hyury spoke on the tools that we can start with. If Annika can, add maybe not just on the tools, but the type of stories that are easiest to start with if I want to do a data story. Do I just go plunge right into a big pile of data and then do as Patchar said, look at the data until you get better questions? That sounds kind of difficult if I'm just starting. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's different types of data stories that you can do. You can start with the data to get your story, or you can start with the story and then bring some data into the story to back it up. And I think that that is an easier way to start. So for example, if you were doing a story on deforestation in Thailand, maybe you've already gone to the field, you have your story, and then you want to get some statistics to back it up. And you could produce maybe a chloropleth map like she has in her story, but she could access this data in a report, so a simple chart which has already been outlined in the report, already explained to you, upload that into Google Sheets, and then produce a map that you can embed in your story, providing additional background information. So I think that's always somewhere we start with the journalists that we train. And also something I wanted to mention, there's some great free courses. So even if you go to Flourish and you don't know how to produce this visualization, Google News Lab has great online courses for free. Also Code for Africa on the academy.africa courses in data journalism, geojournalism, and you can go through step by step how to produce these visualizations. And it also takes time. I think I went through the same training by Code for Africa like 5 times before I understood how to do it. But now I remember. So it takes really embedding and someone who's dedicated. You know, you go through it once, but then refresh your trainings. So if you're embedding it in your newsroom, you need to make it a continuous process.
Right, we'll get back to that point on dedication later. Let's take a question from, Can you please introduce yourself? And
Hey, my name is Elijah Wolfson. I'm the climate editor at Time Magazine. I mean, you're basically like preaching to the choir. My question is actually very related to what you guys were just talking about, but I think the thing that I have struggled with in terms of getting my reporters to get into this stuff is not so much like, do we have the tools to do this, but how to like motivate and convince them that it's worth the stuff that, you know, the time and effort that it takes. I think it's totally within a lot of people's means, but they're not. I don't know. I feel like reporters aren't necessarily trained to think of it in the same way that they're trained to think of other journalistic tactics, I guess. I don't know. Well, is there anything that you have found to be effective in convincing them that it's worth it? Like me personally, like I'm very into it. You know, I taught myself, you know, R and Python and all this stuff, and and QGIS and stuff like that. But I feel like it's hard to sometimes get people who have come up through traditional journalistic programs or whatever to really like engage with it. So if there's anything that you think you've seen to get people into it, I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Elijah.
From my experience, it's a challenge for sure. But I think that data is something that's growing, and a lot of journalists actually want to learn. It's a very marketable skill, and everyone is talking about data journalism. Of course, when it comes down to actually doing the math, usually the point in our training programs when we lose the most people is when they have the spreadsheet and we start doing like the calculations, and but we regain them when we start producing like a map or a visualization. But yeah, I think one, if you can have some element of mentorship, that's helped a lot. Like someone who's done this before, who can inspire the journalists and take them through and follow up with them, even when they get lost. Like, how far are you? Do you have any challenges? Someone who can inspire can help.
I agree with Annika. I believe we have to not convince, but to try to the reporters to understand that it's an necessary skill. You're not changing your professional, your career. If you understand data journalism, data visualization journalism, or all the tools that are available for data journalism as an necessary skill, you understand that you can make powerful stories and can go further on your investigations. So I believe that's the way. In fact, that's how I tried to convince myself that a few years ago that I had to understand a little bit of data, of SQL, of Python, anything else. Not just because I want to be someone that write codes or whatever. No, but I don't want that, and in fact I can. I have to do the courses one, two, three times, and I still don't understand everything. But when you start to understand that, if you understand the basic of a powerful tool like QGIS, and how you can tell big stories that could reach big tech companies, that can affect big tech companies, I believe it could work.
Yeah, also, just to add, it also helps journalists to advance their careers. This is something that we've seen in the Nile Basin. When a journalist gets recognized for a story that has visuals and data, maybe they can submit it to different awards programs, they get recognized online, on social media. It really inspires them to do more stories. So, and there's also a lot of opportunities out there for data journalism awards or grants or different training programs. So kind of also positioning it as something that's also beneficial to you and for your career and as a person can help.
Yeah, Patchar, you want to add?
I would like to share a bit from my experience. Actually, I really related to your opinion. We have been working quite a lot with Thai media houses, and there's always be a question if it's really worth it. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, it requires a big team to do that. For our project, usually we take at least 3 months to build on one site for the project, and not every media house can afford that. And so it's always be a question of how you can strategically choose the topic, which one that you're gonna do, which one that is worth it to have this effort to put onto to build up this kind of work. And usually most of the media look at it as they will do the evergreen kind of topics that can last longer, and we can build tools within the data storytelling that people can come back when the issue reoccur. And so that's one way to have help the piece have a longer lifetime for for the audience. Yeah.
Right. Next question, please.
Hi. Yeah, Ooh, that's loud. I was wondering, with either way, I know you talked about starting with the story and then adding data, or starting with the data to help find the story. But I guess I was wondering how you figure out, when you're designing these investigative stories, how you figure out what are the data you need or that would help your story. Is it are they just generated with the people that you talk to, and then you find the missing pieces, and then from there, or just for someone who's fairly new at this?
Anyone give it a
try? In my case, I have been investigating illegal mining in the Amazon. In the last 3 or 4 years. So since the beginning, I understood that there's a lot of data available on the Brazilian government. And since the beginning, I understood that I had to prepare some kind of methodology to check these mines, to check the names related to these mines, the situation of any of each mine request, and how it could affect protected areas or indigenous territories. So what I did was that 3-4 years ago. So okay, I need this data, mine request. I need the shapefiles of the indigenous territories, the shapefile of the protected areas, and data about companies in Brazil. So I basically worked with these databases, and during the investigation, I tried to pick and I try to pick information from other databases too, but I have this line of investigation that I try to keep it because it's kind of working, so that's it.
Annika, you?
Yeah, I think what I would add is look at which data is telling the story that you want to tell. Because something we struggle with a lot of journalists who start out with data, they say, okay, my story is on this topic and I found this data. And when you visualize it, you realize that chart is not adding much to the story in terms of what you actually want your audience to get out of the story. So, for example, look for data which may be demonstrating like a change or an extreme or something that you're focusing on in your story, which tells a story. I just give the example of a story we did when the COVID lockdown hit between Rwanda and Congo. And we were looking at the informal water trade and how people in eastern Congo were depending on water that was being imported across the border. And then we were able to get data that saw over the years like how this trade had been increasing, and then suddenly there was a drastic change. So that was really the only visualization we really needed for that story because it told the story, but just in one chart. Whereas you could put a lot of other data sets looking at like water access overall and background information, but doesn't really give you the essence of the story.
So in that instance, just that one chart, right? Like what does using that chart instead of just writing in text, like what's the added value? I could have just could it have just been written in text and it would be much easier to deliver that message? Or?
Well, I think humans respond to visuals. So if it's something that's understandable, simple, and clear, and we see it, like we see a chart that's going up, and then suddenly the lockdown, it's dropped. I mean, this is much more impactful for us as visual beings than just reading the numbers. And people can often like gloss over numbers when they just read them.
So that's one way, I guess, to supercharge our stories, right? And there are many ways of supercharging our stories. One way I think is to be able to look at the data and from that glean some insights, right? Some insights that it's really surprising and that really makes the story different. And for freelancers, like when we pitch, right, that extra surprise element is really important. It could land us a piece in a big newspaper or in a local one. But it's not so easy to get those insights. Can you share any tips or ways that you look at data and try to find this sort of insight, if there's even a method to it? For example, like Patchar said just now, look at the data until you have better questions. What is looking, and what is better? Yeah, and how do we get insights from that? Yeah.
Okay. I think there's many ways to get insight from the data. You can start by yourself, like working on the data, and visualization is one way that you can see some insight. Like you can see trends, you can see outliers.
So we plot it ourselves first?
Yeah,
okay.
By yourself, and then you can see you can start easy to do that. But we always work with experts. We not just only looking at the data by ourselves and see and try to make sense of it. We have an idea of that, but we will consult with experts who knows the domain expert will know better than us, why it's happening in this way, and they might have another question for us, their explanation can trigger the insight that we can dig down and ask another better question later on. So I would suggest you can start by yourself, try looking at it. Visualization is one way to do that, and also consult with the expert.
When we talk about illegal mining in the Amazon, in fact, it's not that difficult to find stories for pitch to new newspapers, because there is a lot of problems going on there. And for example, when I started the Mining the Amazon project with InfoAmazonia, the second phase of the second step of the project, the first step we talked about protected areas, and then 1 year later with RJF Fund, we talked about indigenous territories, and we we invited 4 journalists to investigate this data because we found out almost 3,000 illegal mining requests in the Amazon. And if you think about it, if you have one mining request, you can write about it. You can make a story about it. You can understand what is going on in that spot, like I did on the Ghana Gold story, on the Ghana Gold case. And so we invited 4 journalists to investigate with us, and we basically said what we did, looking into the data first, of course, was which stories we have here, which, for example, which indigenous territory is more affected by these mining requests. This was one of the stories. The number of the mining requests that were presented to the government in the past 10 years. And for example, another story that we wrote, we split it to I don't know where we published. I believe we published on Deutsche Welle. Was about the international companies that were related to these mining requests. So in my field, it's very easy to find problems, and that's sad, right? That tells a lot about the current situation of Brazil, because we have not just a terrible a person in charge, that not just a terrible president, but he's a terrible human being. So, so for me, it's not. You look into the data. You will find a lot of stories. If you are investigating illegal mining in the Amazon, don't worry about that.
So for you just need to look at the map and then you find many things. Okay.
Yeah, it's not a problem. If you are investigating illegal mining or
good for investigative journalists there. Then.
Yeah.
Nika. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would just give an example of a big data set that we got about 2 years ago, or like 1 year ago and a half, that was looking at wildlife trafficking seizures over 10 years in 7 countries in East Africa. So we requested for this data, and then when we got it, we were like, what story do we tell from this data? And there are so many different variables, like there's the seizures over the years, there's the types of transport used, there's the different species that are being trafficked, there's comparing the countries, and there's comparing change over time. So what we started out by doing was producing like a series of charts that looked at all of the different variables, so we could see what's particularly interesting, what has changed, what's an outlier, and find out where the story was. So I also wanted to mention that there's a couple of free tools on Google Sheets. So this includes a small button at the bottom that will give you minimum, maximum, and average for like any of the columns in your chart. We use it all the time with the journalists who are just starting out, who don't want to do math. And then there's also...
We just gain an insight. Yeah.
Yes, and there's also another button, I think it's called Insights, and you click it, and it brings up pivot tables, and pivot tables are one of the hardest things for journalists, but it's a way that can extract out like different variables to produce mini charts within your data and gives you different insights, and they also produce even some charts for you. So that's a starting place when you have like a very big data set and you don't know where to start from.
Right, that's a question. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Gustavo from RIN. I want to make a question. I love your concept of having an evergreen place to go, which I suppose is a tool, a platform. And I know you all did platforms. You did the Mine Amazon. I forgot the name of the platform, but it was the pandemic in the Nile Basin. What do you think about platforms? When is the moment to change from one story and create a platform? And what are the challenges of maintaining a platform? I certainly know many of them, like to keep updating server costs. I'm just suggesting, but what is the advantage and what is the moment that you change from one story to build a platform?
Thank you. I can start that. As I mentioned before, there is a lot of problems going on about illegal mining in Brazil, and when we started to scraping the data, we found out more than 3,000 illegal mining requests, for example, affecting indigenous territories. So it's, if you think it, you can write. I would say it again, but you can write 3,000 stories, and it's something that I can do alone, even when we hired invited 4 journalists to investigate these stories with us, we cannot do that by ourselves. It's too much. And in my case, I believe and I was always talking with Juliana Muri and Gustavo from Gustavo, there's you, right? From Info Amazonia. The creator platform is a way to try to reach all the stores, the most of the stores possible. And if we create a tool where other journalists, even that doesn't know how to manage the data, but if we create a tool to help them to reach the stores that are there are interest for their newspapers, we could reach more cases. So that's why in fact, when we launched the Managed Amazon, we published 8 or 9 stories, and of course we celebrate, and I feel very happy. I felt very happy, but I have to admit that when other newspapers start to reach, other journalists from other newspapers start to call, start to send messages, oh, hey, I want to write a story, and I want to mention Managed Amazon because you have the data, it's easy to manage, whatever. And for me, it was really more recompensate. I don't know if that's the word, but for example, The Guardian mentioned or Managed Amazon, O Globo, UOL, I believe Folha de São Paulo mentioned too. So a lot of big newspapers, big communication companies in Brazil are using. So I believe that's what the point where you can think on build a platform. What's the use from this platform? It's just for understand your story, or because other people can use this platform to write other stories or to understand other kind of things that you're not putting in your story. So my experience that's the point to build a platform.
So, yeah.
I would like to add on that. I would say you have to be clear about your audience and the objective. So if your objective is to raise awareness or educate people, maybe platform is not that necessary. Like maybe you can go for data storytelling and it's work better. And your audience, who are really your audience, like he just said, I would like to bring up one example that we did one project on the. It's an anti-corruption project. We have the data of the local government procurements all over the country in Thailand. So we identify our audience as a journalist and also people who live in different areas for them to help to do the investigation from the data. So with this objective and audience, we decide to build a platform rather than a data story that summarize everything, but we want them to explore the issues customized to their related to their place of living, and and help journalists to investigate more about the issues. So yeah.
Do you have a question? Yeah. So we have time for this. This will be our last question. But I think if you guys don't mind, we'll extend a few more minutes because we started late. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Hey everyone, Astrid, I'm from Paris, France. I was wondering, there's many ways to interpret data, and how do you make sure, especially when you're starting off, that you're not making any mistakes? And have you ever made any mistakes? And then final question tied to that, when you're doing interviews and just reporting on the field, have you ever talked to someone or saw things that contradicted your findings?
So we probably don't have time for all three to answer. Whoever wants to answer the most, yeah. You can choose if you want. No? Annika then.
Maybe to start with your last question. So when we were doing the wildlife trafficking story, and we had gotten this big data set from an NGO that regularly collects data on large-scale trafficking, we found that during the COVID pandemic, there was like a huge drop in trafficking, less than 50%. But actually, our reporting with more than 10 journalists in the country showed that poaching, like local poaching, had increased. But these cases were not being tracked by the NGO, and that was also because of the challenges in the COVID pandemic. So we had to figure out how to communicate. Like maybe the international trafficking, what was being flown across airports, decreased because of COVID, and also due to a lack of data collection. But locally, there were reports of increased poaching. So that was kind of a challenge in communicating, and also a gap in data. I think there's no way to really avoid making mistakes. Use mentors and people who you can run your work by before you publish. And also be careful about analyzing data. Data is not, as we know, the answer. It's always there to be critiqued and ask about which data is missing. And sometimes you can get it wrong if you access a data set that's not updated or not really credible or not comprehensive. So that's something that to be aware of when you're starting out.
So I'll add one last question that I really want to ask, and then we'll do a wrap-up. We often associate data, using data and visuals with an effective tool to convey message, right, to help our readers understand. But what about the emotional side? Can data and visuals help us trigger emotional response in our readers? Like what type of visuals will be able to do that? I mean, other than videos and photos. Do you aim to make a graph that can trigger emotion in the reader? Would that be a reasonable objective or goal? Patchar?
Okay. Yeah, actually, we're very interested in that approach as well, and we try to develop that. I think in the field it's called data humanization.
Data humanization?
Yeah,
okay.
Humanizing the data,
Right, okay.
to make it more related to people. So it's not only put a graph or charts that look very academically or scare people, but we try to put a design into the visualization to make it relevant to the people. One example that came up in my mind is not our work, but it is of the New York Times, that they report the death tolls of the COVID-19, and they put it in the front page as dots of the each loss. And it's very impactful in my opinion. It's not only present the graph, the numbers, but it's it's like a timeline, and you see dots and the density of dots in each in period of time. So I think that way you can humanize the data that you present. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. No?
Yeah. Also, we talk about how all stories are local. People really care about their area, what is happening where I live. So I think we can really do that through interactive maps. And we really saw that also in the COVID pandemic, where there could be a chloropleth map, and then if your area is the one that's increasing in cases, maybe it's not emotional, it could be emotional, but it's something that people care about. And also in our map with the wildlife seizures, if people see, they zoom into their area and see there's a lot of crimes happening, that can make them as an individual care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just occurred to me that actually surprise is also an emotion. So I guess we can always aim to do that. So we'll end with our request, each of our panelists to share one thing, really brief, one thing you learned today from today's session. That will be our wrap up. So let's start with Hyury. Me? Yes, you. What did you learn today?
Let me see.
Okay, you learned.
It's a trick question, right? I don't know what to learn, but I liked a lot the work of my two colleagues here, because it's not just for journalists, but to train the community to approach involve, to create some kind of involvement in their project. So that's something that I would like to keep in mind for my next project. You know, to call for the community, to bring the community that we are writing about to participate more of the story that we are trying to tell.
Right, Annika.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from both colleagues here, but I think something in common with both of you is focusing on one issue over a long period of time using really comprehensive data sets. So I think it's something that we will start doing more at InfoNile, like looking at the same topic but over many years and tracking the changes. And I also really love how you're using satellite imagery. I'd like to know more. Thank you.
All right, Patchar.
For me, I see a lot of opportunities to work on data and visualization, like from you tools. Like there's so many ways, and there's so many type of data and many way of working, like using like multimedia as well. So it's very inspiring. Like we can do the project that can be like there are many possible ways that we can bring the attention from the audience and make it more engaging.
All right, thank you. So for everyone, the Pulitzer Center, you know, if you like the work that we have done here and what we have spoken, you have learned something, then do know that the Pulitzer Center is a non-profit journalism organization, and your support is important to sustain the work. So if you're inspired at all, you know, please consider supporting the Centers of Vital Mission by donation. Visit www.pulitzercenter.org/donate. And with that, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. And thank you again, and thank you everyone.